Hi there, this is Josh from Literary Gladiators, and today I'm here with another video from the vault. What I'm going to be pulling out from the vault today are the 10 best books that I read in 2011. 2011, I was making my way through my first year of college. Then for the fall of 2011 was an entry into my second year of college, and it was a very adventurous year, a year that I learned a lot. It was a year with challenges, but it was a year with good books too. I read quite a number of books that I gave 5 stars to, and while none of them made it to my best of all time, it was still a year that I really I was introduced to a lot of different writers, a wide variety of different things, and it was also the year that I started reading Harry Potter because I was in a brief relationship with someone who was a huge enthusiast for the Harry Potter universe. Let's hop right into the list before I reveal any more. This is going to be like my other best of the year from the vault. It's going to be more anecdotal. And at number 10 is Dead Sea by Brian Keene. Brian Keene is one of those underrated horror fiction writers that people should be reading if they want to read horror fiction from anybody besides Stephen King. They can like Stephen King, like myself, but they want to know what horror fiction has to offer. And this is a zombie piece where Lamar Reed, who's the central character, is black, gay, and really filled with common sense. I really liked him as a character. I liked how he was honest, straightforward, and he was pretty. I think he did a fine job with everything that took place in this piece, fighting zombies, and I thought that it was very effective. It really fed into my wants and desires as far as consuming more horror fiction is concerned. And I think that the one thing to keep in mind about 2011 is that it was a year that I was really going to immerse myself in horror fiction. But with people that I come across and different circumstances that had an influence on the way that I read that year as well. And number 9 on my list is Dr. Rat by William Kotzwinkle. And I think that the initial impression that I had and what other people had is, what the hell is this? Because it's basically Animal Farm in a laboratory. It's about this rat who defends the actions of animal experimentation among humanity in the science and medical worlds, and how the other animals are against it and plan to revolt, whereas Dr. Rat supports their cause. And he uses these really deranged jingles to defend their case. This book was so strange and outlandish, but it was intriguing too. It was definitive in how eccentric it was. Number 8 on my list is When the Wind Blows by John Saul. I read this in the beginning of 2011. I want to say it was in January. But this is the kind of book that keeps you up at night. This is the one that I had to keep reading, the one that really put me in the atmosphere where your central character is in a new home, living with these horrific, suspicious people in a horrific, suspicious setting. But I think that those that are looking for a fine piece of authentic, atmospheric, terrifying horror fiction should read this book. And it also made me an enthusiast for John Saul's works in general. I felt that Suffer the Children and Punish the Sinners were both very intense pieces, but When the Wind Blows is what made me a fan. Number 7 is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Now, this is a complete collection of his works, but this is where you can find the title story. This also includes his plays and his story collections. But Picture of Dorian Gray is such a fascinating story because it really touches upon the trivial commentary that Wilde has on Victorian England and takes the novel format to commentate on how frivolous things are and the various aspects of the different figures within this piece, but in particular the vanity that Dorian Gray is immersed in and wishes to obtain. But this is something I would like to read again, though. I reread it for a discussion, but I would like to reread it. I'd like to read it a third time to even strengthen my understanding. I do not have number 6 because when I read the Harry Potter series, I borrowed all of the books. The only one I have right now is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone because I bought it for a young adult literature class and I never sold it or donated it or found another home for it. But for number 6, I have my favorite book in the Harry Potter series, and that's Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. This is the book, the 4th of 7, that follows the Triwizard Tournament, which, being very involved in the tournaments where I went to high school, I thought that this was something that really caught my attention. There were representatives from each of the schools, but Harry Potter is inserted into the tournament by an alternate being that when they make that assertion, they have to abide by it. And so Harry Potter takes part as well. The other member of Hogwarts that takes part is Cedric Diggory. And this is the turning point of the Harry Potter series, where it goes from being a relatively accessible for kids to being much darker and more targeted toward an older audience. Everything turns here. And I think that the Goblet of Fire, in my mind, and for what I was looking for, proved to be the most engaging in the series. And the whole, I think, the incorporation of the tournament aspect and what was incorporated into this piece made it my favorite. Number 5 on my list is Farewell Summer by Ray Bradbury, which I would say that looking back, I would like to reread this along with Dandelion Wine, and then reevaluate whether or not I would think the same way. Because this is the sequel and a follow-up of Dandelion Wine that takes place in that same summer, but it has to do with Douglas Spalding and his war against time and his difficulty with wanting to leave this summer behind and move forward in life. And more so, growing up and transitioning away from innocence. But I think what really impressed me was that I finished this in a day. And I was engaged in this story throughout. It was a little over 200 pages. And I think that when I finish something that quickly, it's generally a good thing. But I could say the same about things like First Time for Everything. It's always a feat when I can finish something in a day. It's a testament that shows how much I enjoy a work. Number 4 on my list is Dark Mountain by Richard Lehman. And this is my first Richard Lehman work that I read. He is somebody that I had wanted to read leading up to this point, and this was just such an engaging work of horror fiction following a monstrous man-child and how when they bring him down, his mother puts a curse on the two families that chased her son away as they went camping. And it leads them into this horrifying experience that takes place well beyond their camping trip. But I read this very quickly. To me, it felt like the way I used to enjoy Burger King, where it was a treat and a pleasure. Of course, I will read more of Richard Lehman's works going forward. I haven't had fast food in 10 years. The third best book that I read in 2011 is Life Itself by Roger Ebert. And this is something that I really wanted to pick up because I was very much into Roger Ebert's movie reviews at this point in time. I would frequently and regularly check his website every week as he released more movie reviews. And this is a collection of interconnected essays that he had written about various aspects of his life. They weren't always, it wasn't like timeline sequential, but he did talk about members of his family. He wrote about going to school. He wrote about working for the Chicago Sun-Times. He wrote about his challenges. He wrote about different actors and actresses as well. He wrote about Gene Siskel. And just his views on life. He wrote about his wife, Chaz. And I think that this is everything I was looking for in a book like this. Number 2 on my list is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stieg Larsson. This is the first book in the Millennium Trilogy that follows Lisbeth Salander and Mikael Blomkvist. And Blomkvist is a journalist. Salander is very much into computers and everything that goes about if you want any details as far as getting into computer files and whatnot, she's the one for you. But I was just amazed by the way that everything was set up in here. I just really enjoyed the crime thriller aspect to it. I think that Lisbeth Salander is a great, what I'm led to believe is a neurodivergent hero. Blomkvist even says that he speculates that she has Asperger's syndrome. But this Stieg Larsson wanted to write 10 books, but it ended up only being 3 because he died while writing the 4th one. The series has continued, but with different writers, and I have to look up and see whether or not they honored the storyline that Stieg Larsson had. But I did read the first 3 books, and I really liked them. We'll be talking more about them, at least one of them, in a future video. But I can remember being engaged in this, and then going to see the film, the American version, when it came out. I would be inclined to check out the Swedish version as well, because this is native to Sweden, set in Sweden. Stieg Larsson was Swedish, but this really took the world by storm, and I think that it was rightfully so. And the best book that I read in 2011 is Destiny of the Republic by Candice Millard. And this is a biography on our nation's 20th president, James Garfield. But the concentration lies on his assassination, where he was shot by a madman, but ultimately killed by the arrogant, headstrong, narrow-minded, and ignorance of Dr. Willard Bliss, who only allowed for Alexander Graham Bell to examine one side for the bullet rather than another. And if it wasn't for the poor medical practices, James Garfield would have been able to survive. Out of the 4 presidents that were assassinated, he was probably the one that would have most likely survived being shot. And I would say William McKinley could have as well, if the circumstances were better. Abraham Lincoln was in a state where he really was not in good condition, and John F. Kennedy, his head was blown off, and that's a very long story unto itself that would take up an entire video on itself as far as what happened to him. But what I really liked about this book is that it was incredibly informative, but incredibly accessible and engaging. And I think that after reading this, me as a reader realized that James Garfield really, it's a great shame that he went the way he did, because we're left to believe what would have happened had he been able to at least serve his term, or what he could have done as a president. Because he was shot 4 months into his term. He was only president for 6 months, but really only got to do anything for 4 of them, because the last 2 months he was bedridden and incredibly sick. But I think that this really is a great feat of bringing attention and information to one of our lesser known American presidents. And that really stuck out to me. So this is a stack of 9 out of the 10 best books that I read in 2011. It was a great reading year, a very prosperous reading year. And in our next video, I'm going to be talking about the best books that I read in 2012. If you like what you see on this channel, please subscribe for more. And if you really like what you see, please support us on our Patreon. For the money that we make will allow us to provide you, the viewer, with even more great content. For now, and as always, I encourage you to keep reading.